Well, good afternoon everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Hey, today we're going to install an Airaid cold air intake on my Jeep Gladiator back here. Now, Airaid claims that you can get up to 12 extra horses for doing this, up to 12 extra horsepower, and an increase of up to 10 pound-feet of torque. So it's going to be very interesting to see if that indeed works. But we're going to unbox this, and I'm going to show you how to put it on. Alright, let's go ahead and see what's inside the box real quick. First off, here is the part number right there, in case you guys are interested in this. And we're going to go ahead and unbox it, see what they actually sent us here. Got directions here, along with what appears to be some Airaid stickers. We shall see. Packing material. Here's the cold air intake tube stamped with Airaid on the outside. Got some couplings here and some hardware. Also inside we have the air box. Looks pretty good. And the cover for the air box. These are a little oily in here, I will say. And then the air filter. I believe I did go with the non-oiled version. So let's take a look. Make sure that's correct. And indeed, it is the dry filter. That's what I wanted. Because I just didn't want to mess with oiling it up. So, and then looks like some more Airaid stickers in here. That's cool. So we have plenty of Airaid stickers. And that's all there is in there. So, that's everything that you get in the kit, I'll call it. Go ahead and set this aside. It does say Airaid on top of the filter. That's pretty cool. Alright, let's go over there. We're going to take the existing one off, and then there are some parts and things that we have to take off of the existing or the OEM air intake and put onto this one. So let's get that one off. First of all, the tools that you'll need to remove the existing cold air intake. 10mm socket and a ratchet. You could use a power tool, but when I'm working with plastics, I like to use by hands. An 8mm socket. A little trim tool. And it never hurts to have a little screwdriver and maybe an extra little light to brighten things up a little. So, we're going to start here with this bolt. There's one over here on the left. We're going to go ahead and remove that. Pretty simple. Set that aside. Next we're going to go to the center, remove these two. Again, pretty simple. Let's see, now they do actually come out, so set those aside. There we go. And next up, we're going to remove the vacuum tube back here. There's a gray piece right on the back here. You should be able to just push that in and pull that off towards the cabin. So, let's see how that works. That's pretty easy. Just came right off. Next up, we have to remove the mass airflow sensor power here. And this is where the little screwdriver is going to come in handy. There's a little tab on the back, just push that in and this should pull right off. Just like that, pretty easy. Next up, there's a wire here that's attached to, see if I can get you a little better view, that's attached to the cold air intake itself. It has two little prongs here. We're going to see about pulling those off and then kind of lay that off to the side. And then the last part that we have to do is the clamp that's actually on the throttle body. That is where the 8mm socket comes in handy. We'll go ahead and loosen that up. And it was way loose to begin with. Wow. I actually have another one of these clips on the back over here. So we're going to have to pull that off as well. So we'll use our trim tool again. Pull that off. I'm going to go ahead and remove this part of the air intake because I think that'll make it easier to get off. So let's do that. There, we'll set this aside. Oh, well, it helped not having the end on it. I don't know. Make sure. It does have these little grommets on the bottom. You need to make sure those stay in the holes down below. So we're going to pull those off, and I'm going to go ahead and insert them back into the holes down here, because we will need those for the new air box to plug into. Alright, so now we need to go over to the table and transfer some of the pieces from the existing OEM cold air intake to our new cold air intake. Okay, actually, before we go over to the table to do what we need to do, switching parts and stuff, following the directions, we are going to need to install this coupling onto the throttle body. That's the next order of business as far as instructions go. That's the part number that's on it. It's J3047. So we're going to go ahead and install this on here because there's no reason not to do it yet, I don't think. Let's go ahead and tighten that down. Again, you don't want to kill it. You don't need to, but it does need to be pretty nice and snug on there, I think. So fit it up against the edge of the throttle body, and then just go ahead and tighten it down. Again, no need to kill it. You just want to have it nice and snug on there, obviously. Now we're going to head over to the table to do the next step. Okay, first up, we need to install this provided grommet into the Airaid cold air intake tube here, and it's going to go right here in this hole. It looks like it's going to be a pretty darn snug fit, so I'm going to go ahead and wrestle that in there, and then we'll come back on for the next part. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. Getting this rubber grommet in the hole was a bear. It's tight, it's difficult to get in. You're going to have to use, unless you have just steel hands, you're going to have to use some kind of a screwdriver or something to get it in. It does go in. You just have to work it and kind of prod it with a screwdriver. I just used a really dull medium-sized screwdriver to get it in, but I did get it in. So, next up, that was a bear. Next up, we have to remove the mass flow air sensor from the stock unit. This has a little nub right here that you have to twist it off counterclockwise. Pay attention to its positioning because you're going to want it the same way that it is on the Airaid intake. So you have to overcome this little nub right here. I'm actually going to use a little a little screwdriver rather, just kind of push gently up on that nub. This is very fragile. It is plastic, so you want to be very, very careful. But I'm going to use my fingers to twist it and just a little screwdriver to pull it up on this nub. Okay, next up is the Airaid glass window. You want to orient the box so that the big hole, the big opening is facing up. And this is if you're sitting in front of it. Small opening is facing down. And then the Airaid, which you guys can maybe see here, will read this way. You need the smaller of the Allen key bolts or screws, a couple of the locking nuts, and 4 washers. 1 washer on the top and 1 washer on the bottom underneath. The nuts themselves are 10 millimeter, and I believe it is a 4 millimeter Allen key. So, grab our Allen key. With any luck, mine are still in the right spots on my little thing here. Let's find out. Make sure it is a 4. It is a 4. So, we're going to go ahead. We'll actually just start with the top one. Kind of hold it in place. Go ahead and feed that through. Put our washer on the back. See if I can do this with 2 hands. Alright, that gets it started on the top. We'll go ahead and put the bottom one on, tighten that up. Again, you don't want to kill it because it is all just plastic. So just get it good and snug, and that's it really. Okay, next up we have these little, what I'll call nubs. They're actually feet, I guess. These are what are going to go down into the grommets that I showed you we needed to make sure stayed in there when we took the original airbox out. So these just take a standard 10 millimeter bolt, a lock washer, and a flat washer. Just sit them on top, right here on the edge like so. and then thread the bolt up through the bottom and tighten them down. Okay, it is filter time. So we need the cover, which is this, and the bigger end, or the bigger opening, which is this side. You can see here versus here. Obviously it wouldn't really fit that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to jam the filter onto the end of this thing. I believe the easiest way to do that, I think, is probably just to put it in there and use a little muscle. Okay, we've got it on. To be honest, I don't think I had the clamp loose enough. It did go on rather easily after I loosened the clamp just a little bit more. So make sure you have that thing almost all the way off. Not quite, but almost. And then you just kind of put it on from the top and pound it a little, and it'll go on. You can see it's up against the edges here, so it's on as far as it will go. Now I'm just going to go ahead and tighten down the clamp and move on to the next step. Okay, next up we want to go ahead and put the filter in the box. Kind of hard to mess that up because these beveled edges match the beveled edges on the gearbox itself pretty easy. We're going to take 4 of these 4mm Allen head bolts and put them in. Okay, one last thing we need to do over here at the table before we move back over to the Jeep. We want to go ahead and put this grommet, or this connector on here. We're going to slip it over with a clamp, obviously, around the outside so that we can go ahead and tighten that down. So now we're ready to go over to the Jeep and finish the install. Okay, next up, before we move on, we have to put this little rubber grommet connector kind of thing on the Jeep. So we're going to remove this 10mm bolt. It's the second one in. So you have the first one here, the second one here, because this is going to go in and take its place, and that's what we're going to secure the airbox with. So let's go ahead and get that off. There is a nut behind it, so you don't have to put any nut or anything on there. And this you might just want to store somewhere. You're not going to need this again, but if you ever go back to stock, you can go ahead and put it back in. So this we're just going to hand tighten in here. That's all it really needs. You don't have to kill it or anything. So that's it. We have that in, so now we can grab the airbox and go ahead and install. If you remember, in the beginning we had those little grommets down there that pulled out that I told you to make sure are stuck back in the holes, because that's what those 2 little pegs on the bottom of the airbox are going to go in. Just to make them slide in a little bit easier, I'm just going to hit them real quick with a little bit of my soapy water concoction, just to make sure that they slide in there easy. So just a little bit, just a touch. Okay, next up we're going to go ahead and put the tube part of the cold air intake in. I have the coupling on here already fastened down to the throttle body. We are going to leave this side loose though, because I'm going to want to be able to adjust it. So we'll go ahead and slip the hose clamp over. And again, we'll just leave that loose. Going to go ahead and slide the connector in. Okay, let's go ahead and sit the airbox in. Remember, we have these 2 little pegs that need to get down into the holes, and then the hose clamp also to connect it up to the cold air intake tubing. So let's go ahead and finagle this down in there. Okay, we've got it all laid in place in here. Everything is still loose, and we need to go ahead and fasten this little 10mm bolt right here in this grommet looking like thing we put in right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. That again is just to hold the airbox in place. A little tight in here, but we should be able to, I think we should be able to get in there. Okay, we got the screw on the inside of the airbox here to hold it steady. It's nice and tight. I will tell you, your hand, at least my hand, doesn't fit down in here very well without scraping. So if you've got big hands, you're going to have a hard time putting that bolt in there. I did get it in. To be honest, I dropped it down in there once. I had to pull the whole airbox out because it fell down in those little indentated holes inside where the foot pegs are. So that was kind of a bummer. But anyway, it's in now. We've got everything positioned, as you can see here. So we're going to go ahead and tighten down the clamps, plug back in the connections, and we're going to be good. All right, let's go ahead and get this throttle body clamp tightened down. Alright, I think that's probably snug enough. Perfect. We're in the home stretch. Now we just need to connect up the PCV, or the this PVC hose rather, and then the MAF sensor. So we're going to go ahead and plug that in. Actually, we'll do that one last, just in case. Let me zoom you out. Wouldn't want to miss the very end here, right? All right, let's go ahead and put this PVC hose back on. Should, in theory, slip back on here. There, you guys hopefully heard it snap. It's in. Now, let's go ahead and put the MAV sensor back on. And that should just snap in easily. There you go. That's it. So the installation is done for all intents and purposes. One thing I do want to point out, we have this wiring here that was actually fastened to the OEM air intake. So, and this one as well. This I don't think really makes any difference. We're going to leave that alone. But this, I might go ahead and zip tie somewhere. I'm not sure exactly how I want to do that yet, but I'm going to look at that real quick and then we'll fire it up. Make sure we don't have any error codes. Okay, it is done. You guys can see, there it is, all installed, all tightened up. I did just zip tie these wires that were actually held onto the OEM cold air intake. So they're just zip tied in here. They're not going anywhere. It should be fine. Let's go over here and take a look. We do have the window now where we can see the filter. We're all done. I'm going to jump inside, fire it up, make sure that I don't get any weird error codes or anything. The MAV sensor is in there correctly, best I can tell, so we shouldn't have any issues with that. Okay, we're going to fire it up with you guys. You can see the dash. Again, hopefully we have no issues. I'm not exactly sure that they would show up right off the bat anyway, to be honest. So you can see there are no error messages on the dash, so that's a good thing. I'm going to drive it down the street real quick, then we'll come back on for some final thoughts. Okay, we're done. We're back. Took it for a ride. No trouble lights or no error codes or anything like that on the screen. So worked out awesome. And I made a discovery. You know, this thing adds some awesome sound to the Jeep. It has a throatier growl to it now on takeoff and acceleration, something I really wasn't expecting. It is quite profound and I love it. Here's another quick look at it. You guys can see maybe better out here in the light. Got the whole thing all set up here. I like the window. You can see down in there. Pretty cool. As for installation on this, I'd probably give it about a 3.5 out of 5, 5 being the most difficult. And that's only because there are a couple of things that you have to do with this that are rather difficult and require a good amount of patience. One is that rubber grommet that you have to insert into the cold air intake tube for the MAV sensor. That thing is a bear to get in. 45 minutes or so it took me to get that thing in. Not fun. And secondly is that little screw on the side up at the opening, the big opening on the intake that fastens it to the side of the Jeep. That's kind of a pain to reach inside there. It's just awkward to get to, I guess. I actually dropped the screw down in there once. Had to pull the whole thing off to get the screw out because it fell down in a recessed area and I couldn't reach to get it out. So yeah, about a 3.5 out of 5 level of difficulty. Otherwise, I really do like it. There is one other thing that I wanted to mention, and that is changing the filter itself. You can't take the top off. There's no top access here like there is with an S&B intake. You have to take off the side here. And you can see, obviously, it's connected to the tube. So you would have to, most likely, I mean, I guess you might be able to get, nah, you really couldn't unscrew it because you'd have to take that screw off, one on the other side, and then these two, pull this off and able to, or in order rather, to change the air filter. So you really have to take the whole thing out to change this air filter, and that's a drag. They really should have top access to be able to change that air filter, in my opinion. Now I will say the filter itself is supposed to be good for like 30,000 miles or so, so
It is going to be quite a while before you have to change it, but man, what a nightmare to change it. Anyway, that's it. That's the install. Leave a comment down below. What do you guys think of it? Have you done any cold air intakes on your Jeeps? I'd be curious to know what you used and what your experience was like as far as the install. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, if you'd like to, and you're into the 2020 Toyota Tacoma, or any Tacoma, I have a channel dedicated to that. It is Rob Motive. Check that out. Right up there's my Tacoma resting comfortably. Also, if you haven't already, go ahead and check that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there.